What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Sentinels of Liberty podcast. And I am your host, Redbeard, as always. To those who know me a little bit more, I'm Jeremy. I'm just a regular dude. I work a 9 to 5. Well, technically an 8 to 4, but I digress. This is my thing. I do this. For those of you who might be new, who are returning, most of you know me. I'm a history person. I love history. I got into politics because if I didn't get into politics, politics were gonna get into me. So I figured I would jump the gap on that relationship and kind of close it as soon as I could. I do a little bit of gunsmithy stuff on my downtime, and I enjoy a lot of things. But I am your guest, and this is about as probably good as it's going to get for an intro. Something a little bit different, but thank you everybody for joining. I really, really appreciate everybody taking the time to stop in this evening. I got a couple things that I think are worthy of talking about. A few things definitely that I've thought about over the course of the week, and just considering kind of what the past few months have looked like as it pertains to politics in the United States. The way that things are being conducted, even in so much as foreign relations and so many other things. But I think it bears to mention, and I'm going to kind of cite the crux of what the whole episode's going to be. And those of you who are tuning in obviously can kind of see what the title is. And the very first portion of that title is Americans Are Second Class. And you'll start to see kind of how I feel that argument out a little bit, and I may do a good job. I may not do a good job. I'll let you guys decide, and certainly have a conversation amongst yourselves and really kind of what you guys think. I'll be interested to know and hear what your comments are. See what your comments are rather as we go through this episode. So again, thank you very much for taking the time to check out the episode, and let's get into it. So the big thing, why I kind of talked about Americans becoming second class, there's a number of different issues that I think really have become prominent in the last couple of months. Clearly, there is a demographic within the American society that is becoming very, very, how would you say, averse to the way that things are going. They've become a little bit more awake. They've become a little bit more involved. And when they don't see something, they definitely let you know now. And I don't think that this trend is necessarily a bad thing, but I think a lot of this reaction is coming from the idea that, there was this preconceived notion that if they were to get Trump in, that things would at least, maybe it wouldn't fix everything, but there was a hope that things would start to get somewhat better overall. And granted, there may be a couple things here and there that he's done right. The broken clock is right at least once a day, if not twice a day, depending on the type of timepiece you keep around your home. But I digress. When we look at the things that we're run on, we have to really consider, we have to stand back, and we have to kind of put, our thinking caps on, and we have to evaluate things as to what they are. He ran on, no war, making peace. He ran on balancing the budget. He ran on transparency and so many other things. And when we look at a number of the things that he has talked about, we really haven't gotten really much, if any, substance in return, much less any real action that's going to be definitive of substantiating that. And in the process, one of the biggest issues is a lot of these issues really take place at the root and the heart of supporting the American people. Now, why do I say that? Because if you're going to have a prosperous society, if you're going to have a balanced budget, if you're going to do things that are going to help fix and improve the lives of the American people, you can't constantly be at war. We've seen what war does, the realm of perpetual war, and how it affects not only economies, but how it eventually affects a society through history. We've seen this with the Roman times. We've seen this with many other societies that have come before us. And I think it bears to mention that war should always be one of those things, at least as our founding fathers have seen it, as pretty much a necessary evil. If you have to defend yourself, yes, you have the right to defend yourself, but there were parameters that they specified. And war was something in so much as creating an act of aggression against another nation or a sovereign. They were very specific about this, but at the same time, they made sure not to overwhelmingly define it, because war could be brought out in a myriad of different ways. And so it could be something as simple act of violence. War has torn societies apart. It has the ability to rape and destroy the financial institutions and the economic stability of the company, or the country and the populace of which who are essentially taxed in order to support these wars. It's essentially does put the people last, because the main driving force eventually becomes more money for more weapons for more war. And we've seen this with the forever wars. We've seen this through our history of war since World War II. And you'll even have some people that argue, and I would say that there are fairly compelling arguments to where, if you look at how World War I came about, how World War II came about, that there was a lot of lies, fraud, and deceit that were involved in there that eventually added up to the military-industrial complex. And what we know today is being this a monstrous war machine. Now, all of that being said, I don't want to get too far into this yet, even though I just created a diatribe. You'll have to forgive me. I tend to get a little excited when it comes to these subjects. But when we look at second class, there is another facet of second class that I want to point your attention to that I think is very important. And yes, it still does have something to do with war, but I think a lot of it also has to do with more of a individual economic and even state-centric disposition. And the reason I say that is because we have essentially Exhibit A, where there, I can't even believe they said this out loud, but nothing really surprises me anymore. But you had something come out recently where they had drafted it to where any state that essentially doesn't come out or doesn't ban or doesn't come against, right, a business who chooses who they do or do not do business with, in this case, let's be honest, they were specifically talking about Israel, that they would withhold disaster relief funding. Now, you might go back and actually look at the legislation that, or the papers, however, that describes this whole process. And they did go back and they made a revision, but at the end of the day, the revision is practically meaningless because they still intend the same thing. They want to withhold disaster relief funding from states who don't negate their support for a business or an entity that chooses not to do business with Israel. And I think that is a very, very problematic thing, right? It's a very problematic thing in the case of individual liberty and rights, but also in that the freedom of association. We have the ability. The beautiful thing is, as Americans, we're supposed to, I say supposed to because we were designed as a country that really valued the individual's ability to make their life in the way that they see fit, to be able to freely do business with one another and have this aspect of really the pursuit of happiness, the embracing of liberty, and being able to live the best life you possibly can and to support your family. Now, you can no longer do that without having ramifications, especially as it pertains to the states. And who does it really punish, though? Who does it really punish? It punishes the individual. So yes, they stop the states from potentially getting this funding, but in the end of the day, it's the people of the states that eventually end up succumbing to this punishment. And what does this tell you? What it tells you is they prioritize another country over the very people that voted to elect these individuals to represent their interests. Now, whether it is Israel, whether it is Ukraine, whether it is Zimbabwe, for whatever reason, anytime you have somebody that comes out that overwhelmingly protects another country, another entity, whatever the case is, over the Americans' interest, you now have these individuals that see you as less than. It will always come across as less than. You have now moved into a first-class citizen, premier citizen. You are an American. to a second-class citizen. And maybe even worse, if we're being completely honest. We may be moving already farther beyond the second-class citizen label, and we could be looking at something as nothing more than chattel or serfs or whatever the label is that you want to put onto it. Because in the end of the day, what they're signaling to you, especially with continued aid to Ukraine, continued aid to Israel, and the complete bowing down over to foreign governments and foreign peoples, they're doing this while ignoring you. They're doing this while ignoring your interests, ignoring your grievances, and they're certainly not even trying to fulfill any of the obligations they told you that they were going to do. This is absolutely reprehensible. This is not what the Republic is supposed to be, and is certainly not what a dignified representative of the people is supposed to be. These are the same individuals that will sit there and yell up and down about Ilhan Omar, about having a dual loyalty, while they're going over, kissing the Wailing Wall and praying at it and giving their undying allegiance to a country like Israel, right? It's no mistake at all that these individuals, the more and more shots that you start to see, especially with this administration, the Israeli flag pops up in there, right next to the American flag. And I'm here to tell you, look, there is a loyalty issue in Washington, and it's becoming blatantly obvious when you look at where they're funneling all of these resources, all of this money, all of these weapons, all of which is subsidized and is paid for by you, the taxpayer. What does that tell you? You are nothing more than a way to generate income to support somebody else. This is antithetical to who we are as Americans. It goes against the very American perspective and principles that we see and hold, and it's damaging to us. Again, we have sunk down several levels at this point, and they have no interest in supporting you whatsoever. When they begin to speak out and tell you, you could potentially be fined, or you could go to jail, or we're going to withhold any form of funding after a disaster to support our people, American people, because we don't like the mean words that you say about another country, in this case, again, Israel. And let's be honest, when 2022 rolled around, 2023, Ukraine certainly had a list, and I believe they still have a list of Americans that they don't like talking out against Ukraine. And it's not just Americans, it's many other people. And yet we continue to fund Ukraine so that they can send their own people to slaughter. We continue to fund the actions of some of the most reprehensible people ever seen in government. And these are the people our government officials like to chum up with and buddy up with, despite the fact that we supposedly elected to put them in a position to where they're supposed to represent our interests. But they have more of a incentive, apparently, to represent the interests of people who are not the American citizen, who are not the American individual. And this promotes a very, very trepidatious situation. So we have to really step back and take into consideration, what the heck is even going on anymore? Is this really what it is that we want? Do we want to continue the cycle? Because I, for one, I'm not going to sit silent and just sit back and just say, well, you know, that's just the way it is. That's not the way it's supposed to be. And I'm not going to sit back and accept that that's the way it's supposed to be. I'm going to take a moment here and just peruse some of the comments. But, you know, in the end of the day, we really have to, we can't ignore this. We cannot shy away from this conversation. We can't walk away because we're afraid of being called an anti-Semite or anti-American or anti-whatever. Because in the end of the day, that's not what it is. If anything, the fact that we're trying to speak out and point out so many of these things that put us second next to somebody else, that is the anti-American behavior. These people are perpetrating anti-American behavior. It's anything but America first. It's America last, really. I mean, if you consider how we prop up a lot of the European countries with the almost 900 military bases we have around the world, there's nothing American about that. We're supporting other people's militaries. We're supposed to have a defensive military. That is the way it was intended to be. And unfortunately, if you also consider, when you look at all of these military bases, look at the state that Europe is in. They barely produce anything militarily for themselves, and the very few that they do, it's on such a low scale that they might as well not produce it at all. They're beholden to us almost entirely for their military equipment. They lack the actual ability to, for the most part, like the UK and France and Germany and so many of these other countries, they actually lack the ability to even put up a modest repelling of any form of an invasion that would happen because they're beholden to us. Yeah, sure, we sprinkled some nukes around some of these countries and we gave them the ability, but they could never use them without our consent, much like they can't use most of the equipment without much of our consent. We gave them that equipment. We are the manufacturing ability that provides them the munitions and the missiles and all of this other stuff for their defense. We have essentially neutered Europe. And by subsidizing their defense industry, we're neutering ourselves. Most people don't even realize that we are so low on things for our own defense because we're so busy propping up the defense of somebody else, which we have no constitutional authority to do. If it came down to it, there are estimates, not only by the War College, but by several other defense experts that have been in their field for decades, that we may only be able to sustain a war of attrition for several weeks, not months, not a year, weeks. Because we're so low, we can't even replenish to a reasonable rate our own defensive weapons. So think about that. Not only from a monetary or an economic standpoint, not only from a rights aspect, the usurpation of rights and the ability to freely speak about different countries or people or whatever, because we have a right to do that, or we should, without fear of prosecution. But if it really came down to it, they're leaving us defenseless. And so I'm starting to get this notion, right, that we really are becoming second in line. Second in line. Not first, not third, well, maybe third, but second in line at least. Neutered. We should not have military bases around the world. It has afforded us very little. It is a waste of American resources. It is a waste of American funds. And I know that there's people out there that will fight tooth and nail over the idea that we should have bases all over the world. I disagree with this. And the founders would have disagreed with this. It's not to say that you couldn't have a treaty or you couldn't reach over and at times, be able to visit or have training and exercises with other countries. You certainly could. But to have a permanent base there not only imperils the U.S. personnel and puts us at a much higher risk of conflict, but it also puts at risk that country. We should not be entangling ourselves or concerning ourselves with the affairs of other countries, especially when they don't have anything to do with us. Again, Americans second. We're so busy trying to be the empire of the world that very few of these people fundamentally understand that empires have fallen because they grow too big. They ignore their own people, and they ultimately usurp their own economy, the rights and the liberty of their people. And yes, one could make the argument, well, some of these empires have been around for hundreds of years, right? Yes, but have you ever looked and see how they fall? Out in a fiery, I wouldn't even say a blaze of glory. It's a fiery, squealing death to the end. And then you never see something like it typically come back again. There's a reason for that. So there's a lot of instances to where Americans lose out. We lose out in a very, very big way. We become second to the people that we subsidize. And might I say, when the history books look back and look at the people that we have subsidized, especially as it pertains to the Gaza Strip, how are we going to explain the fact that we funded a campaign where an entire ethnic group of people were slaughtered mercilessly, starved to death, and left destitute, only to be shot the next day for simply wanting to find food or water? And then comparatively, when they look back even further, 80 years from before, there's this quote, it's almost like a political slogan now for how trivial it seems to be given the actions that are taking place and the things that we subsidize. I believe it was said, never again. But yet here we are, the good guys of history, just standing by and watching it. How will they judge us? And I would argue that we should have some trepidation in how we want to be seen by the people of the future. What is the example and the moral responsibility that we're going to set? Again, all of this puts Americans, in the very least, second class. The war machine keeps on turning without any care or concern for the American people, or certainly for the people that they want to destroy, still putting us, Americans, second. Where does it end? We've gained nothing from it. If anything, we've imperiled ourselves, left ourselves defenseless, and destroyed our economy. We continue to bluster, especially after we've struck, part of the nuclear triad of Russia. We continue to maintain this disposition like we would be able to win a nuclear war at any given time at the drop of a hat, one that we're not even prepared to fight for a conventional war, according to many experts, where we can't fight a war of attrition at this point, given how low our stockpiles are and our current capabilities for more than just a handful of weeks if we're lucky. Yeah, we continue to be provocative, not only towards people like Russia, but many other countries. We bully our way around the globe. We say ridiculous things, acting as if it's somehow going to leverage countries, but the reality of it is people are divesting from the American dollar. They're sick and tired of it. And we're all doing this, putting Americans second, because for some reason they feel that if they're just going to, bend down and kiss the hand and subsidize the regime or whoever it is that they feel is necessary, that they're going to want to put forward. I mean, my goodness, it's certainly enriching somebody. It's certainly meeting the goals of somebody, but it's not the American people. It's quite to the contrary. Somebody's getting rich. Somebody's doing well, but it's not us. And I find this to be very, very concerning. We have to step back and really examine what the heck is going on here. Not only for ourselves, but for our posterity. Again, what is the world that we want to leave our future, our children, our posterity? Are they going to grow up in the same conditions in the future, or will they become adults in the same conditions in the future as second-class Americans? There's a lot of very, very concerning things, and it's not even touching on the fact that we have entered a situation where a lot of Americans now, fortunately, not all, I wouldn't even say a huge demographic, but more and more Americans with each and every day are waking up to the lies. They're sick and tired of the BS. They're sick and tired of the zero transparency. The fact that they're being strung along and just simply told, oh, well, we're going to promise results. We swear. No more wars. We swear. We're going to have financial stability. We swear. Well, we just don't see it. And quite frankly, we have no reason to believe you. Your credibility is destroyed. You've lied up and down. You've written checks your ass can't cash. And it's about time that there is some form of a change. I think what's also troubling in moving forward, and some of the other portions that I would like to talk tonight, is you have a lot of people that talk about how bad things really are, how they wish that change would happen, how well, maybe next year, maybe the next voting cycle, it'll be different. I'm here to tell you, at the end of the day, there's two avenues of approach, two that we have to look at very critically if we want some actual change to happen. One, you have to get involved. You cannot sit on the sidelines any longer. You have to research, you have to get educated, and then you have to get activated. You have to get out there and be the difference you want to see, because nobody else is going to be able to do that for you. It's not enough to simply want change. You have to be willing to make the connections, to meet the people, to get involved, to talk to people who you can work with in order to make that change. That is the predominant way of how we get change in this country. Our founders did it. They laid out the groundwork. They created the blueprint. All we have to do is simply just get educated a little bit, meet like-minded people, get out there and be that change that we want to be. It's not going to come easy, and it's certainly not going to come fast. But if you're not putting in the work at all, if you're not at least making the attempt to be involved, well, I find it hard to be able to really sit back and complain. The other portion of it too, all things considered, and I had an amazing guest on last weekend, Rebecca Whiting, who talked about what a mess the election process is and ballot access, and in the end of the day, like how difficult it really is for an additional party to get onto the ballot, for people who want to run that don't want to be a Republican or a Democrat defined, how almost impossible in some ways it is in some states, to the point to where they just flat out will shut you out if you don't call yourself a Republican or a Democrat. People want all this change, and they talk about how bad things really are, but in the end of the day, when it comes down to it, they're not really willing to give another party or another individual a fair chance to be able to do that. And I'm not saying that it's going to be met with rousing success, but it certainly can't be much worse than it already is. I think it's astonishing to me that we have a situation in which there is a monopoly by this uniparty. I mean, really, Democrats and Republicans are the same thing. They just have different means and ways and words of how they're defined. But in the end of the day, they will sell you out all just the same. It doesn't really matter. And I think what is really telling is the fact that they have made several staggering moves to make sure that no other party can be represented on the ballot in many states. When you look at many states, they pretty much make it impossible for somebody from, the Independent Party, the Libertarian Party, the Green Party, and you don't have to agree with any of these parties. But the idea is that if you don't at least allow somebody else to enter the conversation, well, you're just in a country of monopoly. And to expect anything different to come out from that is absolutely insane. It's not enough anymore to run on a Republican or a Democrat platform. As a matter of fact, George Washington himself detested the idea of parties. He thought they were abhorrent and repugnant to the very idea of the republic. He absolutely hated the idea that people would become so beholden to a party that they would stop voting based on the merits of the individual that was running. And truthfully, that's how it should be. People should be able to go and freely vote their conscience. Vote the way that you feel. Don't just go with the party line. Don't just toe the line for somebody that really doesn't have your interest at heart simply because you think it's better than the other team, especially when it's pretty much the same team. And they're restricting your ability to actually vote your conscience. That's repugnant. And it's totally against the idea of what our republic was founded as. This is insanity. It's doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. At some point, this has got to break. And I hope that with the breaking of this illusion, this facade and these lies and all of this gaslighting that we've undergone for so many years, especially notwithstanding the recent times in the last 6 months of how great supposedly things are and how peaceful the world is, which clearly is not the case. Not only are Americans last, but we're getting so many other things stripped from us, whether it's privacy and the ability to freely associate by the likes of government intervention or independent corporations like Palantir, who want to have a collected database to make it much easier to spy on you, usurp your information, and violate and rape your privacy. Or it's the simple ability for you as a business owner. And I know I have some business owners in the live right now. you don't get the ability now to go forth and pretty much not discriminate of who you want to sell your products to. And I thought, as living in a free society, that you had the ability to choose who you wanted your demographic to be. It's absolutely insane. And if you do, and you happen to be in a state that supports you, well, if something happens, well, your state might be shit out of luck because you made a business decision because you didn't want to sell something, say, for instance, to Israel. Well, I guess your people just have to suffer now because they simply cannot provide any disaster relief to a state that allows something like that. Again, Americans have become second class. I don't think I have to really drone on so much more about a myriad of different reasons as to why we've become a second class society compared to the ruling elite. And I would argue the techno elite, the oligarchs that we have in our country that we accuse every other country of having. It really does become a sense of the pot calling the kettle black. And it's really become an overwhelming amount of projection that we point the finger at everybody else, telling them how terrible they are. That if you don't do what we tell you to do, then, well, we're going to tariff you, sanction you, or pretty much destroy you into oblivion, although most of the world just doesn't care anymore. Really, really, really deserves a look into the mirror. Who do we want to be? We have to start making these decisions, and we have to start taking this aspect of power back. Our founders knew this. They gave us the blueprint for it. And more importantly, as I said before, it really comes down to, what do we want to leave our children? Do we want to be a better, little bit freer society than we've experienced in our lifetime? One that somewhat enjoys at least liberty a little bit more? Maybe we can start climbing our way back out of this hole. We can't do that if we're not involved. And we certainly have to come to terms with how things are. It is not enough to simply just go to the ballot box anymore. Albeit, if we do, we should vote our conscience. We should openly extend an invitation to people who aren't Republicans and Democrats, the ability to come in and bring their merits and their principles, and may the best person win. You don't have to agree with these people, but the idea of excluding somebody really is not going to help things. It's going to close things down, monopolize it, make it much harder for your feelings and your opinions and your principles to be heard. We are a nation of free people. That is part of what our society is built upon. And to take that away is very, very repugnant. There's so much that we have to consider. There's so much that we have to take the time and talk with each other and get involved. We can't do this any longer. We can't sustain it any longer. We are in a very dangerous situation that, unfortunately, the people that we have elected have put us in. We've created adversaries around the world that we didn't have to create. We're running around the world subsidizing atrocities. We're ruining our economy here. We're creating this illusion that we're better than we are. And we haven't been that good for a long time. And I know it hurts people to hear it, but look, like, at what point do we just look into the mirror and be like, look, like, something is wrong, something is broken. And it's not to say that we can't fix things. We can. We have to take it seriously. So I'm going to take a look at the comments here and just kind of peruse. I have a little bit of catching up to do. So I just have to, I really appreciate you guys coming on and providing comments. So I feel it's only fair for me to go back and take a look at some of these here. So let's see. John Locke, free US from APAC, 100%. John, also great to have you here. Gene, Centerline Systems, David, really appreciate all of you coming in. There's several comments about, the money laundering scheme in Ukraine, the country that no longer even has to hide the actual Nazis in their ranks. I mean, there's a lot that's coming out, even more so now than ever. And man, I'm here to tell you, there's a lot of inconvenient truths. And the only way we're going to really start to turn the tide is if we're being honest with ourselves. Really appreciate that comment, Centerline. Let's see here. Caste system in India. So this is interesting. The caste system. That's almost kind of like what we're getting into, right? And Gene, that was a great point that you made. It almost does seem like they're creating a caste system here, to the point to where it's like it's getting so much harder to be able to move in and out of your perspective situation that you're born into, and I think it's becoming ever increasingly more difficult, especially in a financial and monetary sense, but also in a social sense too. I've been finding that it's, when you look at the credit rating system in particular, it's becoming much harder in many ways to be able to increase your credit. Now, if you understand anything about the credit rating system to begin with, you'll realize what a sham it really is. And the fact that people used to be able to buy homes and buy things without having a credit rating, I think blows people's minds. You know, when you're kind of beholden to this situation, it does present a growing issue, especially if you're trying to improve yourself, your life, and so many other aspects of being an American. It really makes it hard to move. Chuck, great to see you, brother. Really appreciate you coming in. I'm going to move down here real quick. David with the comment, I'm on fire tonight. Well, I've been bottling this one up for a while, so I really appreciate you guys coming in, and guys and gals coming in and listening to the rants that I have tonight. It really, I feel had to be said. So let's move down here. I really, I absolutely love the fact that you guys are so involved in the comments section here. So Centerline Systems, John Locke for the win. Way to go, John Locke. Looks like you might have a fan going on in here. So absolutely. International bankers have profited from both sides to every war going back to, yeah, 100%. And there was a gentleman that I think a lot of people really have gotten to know fairly well, especially in recent time, Smedley Butler. He was very vocal about the bankers, the corruption, and the institutions that were happening during his time in service. And I believe it was Smedley Butler who said he was essentially a strongman for the banks during his time in the U.S. Marine Corps. And I always thought that was a very interesting position and perspective that he brought. And I mean, when you really look at it, I mean, the more and more time goes on, he's not wrong. So that's I really appreciate you bringing that up, because there's a lot to really take in and observe as it pertains to the bankers, the amount of control that the things like the Federal Reserve and so many other aspects of the banking system really do incur. Yeah, it's huge. So I really like this one too, again from John. People are waking up, but they reflect more with the culture wars to bog us down. Yeah, you know, I think the culture war aspect is definitely a huge component, and it's one of the most useful tools that the politicians and those in power really like to use to augment the attention away from all of the things that they do. It's been definitely one of the more influential mechanisms that they've gotten to pit an American against another American in order to divert attention from things that they're doing, whether it's the usurpation of rights here at home, whether it's waging more wars or using a war as a potential diversion and using a culture war mechanism to justify those wars. It is definitely one of the biggest tools that they have. And it is one that has grown into immense popularity. But I do think that some people are starting to wake up to that too. And hopefully we start to see that tide shift as well. So I think that's a really good point that you made there also, John. Really appreciate that. Deflect. Yeah, I kind of picked up on what you were saying there. So that's great. Yeah, and David makes a great point. There is a cost. There's always an inherent cost, and you're going to have a cost that comes with a little bit of comfort, right? Like you have to be willing to get a little bit uncomfortable in order to try and get that change. And that means giving up maybe a little bit of time, a little bit of money in order to get involved and to make the difference that you want to see. It is one of those things that requires sacrifice. And our founders understood this fundamentally, as well as so many other ardent, liberty-oriented individuals that really made great strides previous to us in order to, further the cause of liberty, further the cause of rights and freedom that we experience, unfortunately, to a somewhat limited degree today, right? So, but there is a cost. There's always going to be a cost. And one of the best things that I had, or that I heard during a discussion that Rebecca Whiting and I had, I don't remember if it was during the podcast or if it was afterwards, but it was the point that the fight for liberty and the fight that we're facing right now, unfortunately, it's basically an eternal struggle. But we have to be willing to fight that struggle in order to give our children, our posterity, our future, a better chance of at least being able to enjoy a little bit more liberty, a little bit more of their rights and their freedoms than we do today. And I think that is a fight that is worth our eternal animation towards and our ability to contest it at every turn. I think it is very much worth it. It is worth the effort, and it is worth the cost that is incurred. So that's a great comment right there. I just want to go down. Let's see here. Yeah, another great comment here also by John. When you look at the Massey situation, it is very interesting in how they're really trying to isolate him. And, a lot of people like or dislike Thomas Massey. But one thing I will say is overall, as it pertains to his record, he's been very consistent in terms of at least attempting to try and put forth liberty first. And he's always tried to some degree, do it in a way that's meaningful, even if it's opposing something that is somewhat negative, like a spending bill, which I'm pretty sure he said no on almost every time. But there's a reason for it, right? Because he doesn't believe that spending ourselves into oblivion is really going to further the American dream, the American realm of liberty, but also to benefit the American way of life and the individual. And so I think there is really something to be said there. And it is amazing how much money they are trying to put forth to essentially primary Massey. And it's amazing how much of a threat they consider him to be. And, I'm not saying that you should swoon over a person like Massey, but I do think it is worth evaluating that if you're putting that much effort into trying to get rid of somebody, well, it merits at least taking a look into why it is that that's the case. So that's a great point. Finding your own demise personally, whenever we need. Yeah, I think this is very interesting. Centerline, you bring up a good point. There really is a situation to where left or right, Democrat, Republican, it really is becoming this vicious cycle. And I hope that more and more people, as time goes on, starts to break from that cycle, because there is a sense of demise. It's a cyclical demise, and it's almost with this notion that if we just give it one more shot, if we just stick with the program, we trust the plan, as so many people say, then perhaps next time will be different. And I would argue that instead of doing that, that we vote on people on their merits. And if there's a candidate that's there, and say they're a libertarian, say they're from the Green Party, say they're from the Independent Party, whatever the case is, if they appeal to you and they have a tendency to align more of what your conscience tells itself, and you've taken the time to figure out what it is that you believe in and the principles that you believe in, and you educate yourself, if they align with you, then your conscience is voting your conscience is important. You need to vote on the merits of the person, or you need to vote for the person that is backed up by merits and has action and is worthy of your vote. Don't just give it to somebody simply because they have a letter by their name. Give it to the most qualified person, in your opinion, that is going to do the job the best. There's nothing wrong with that. It is not a wasted vote. This idea that there is this monopoly on how you vote is absolutely insane. And again, you know that there's a struggle, and you know that they're terrified of any opposing point of view actually coming forth with good ideas, good principles, or on the merits of their work, when they have to basically put legislation forth or rules or regulations in terms of excluding another party from getting that ballot access, or making it very difficult to achieve ballot access. That should tell you a lot about how bad and how in peril our election system really is. And it kind of speaks for itself. So that's a great point. Let's take a look here. Yeah, so there is something to be said about decentralization. And when you look at healthcare, when you look at food and stuff like that, when you look at how the country was set up, when you look at how the republic was first established, there was no provision, and there still is no provision for the government to be able to come in and take control of these things. These are supposed to be private, independent entities. When you start to see government come into these different sectors, especially as it pertains to things like financial institutions, healthcare, and food, it becomes a very egregious, corrupted monstrosity very, very quickly. Never to the benefit, obviously, of the average American, but to the benefit of the people who are in the power to be able to make these decisions that will ultimately not only benefit the government, but be able to enrich themselves through very insidious and underhanded policies and regulations, et cetera, et cetera. So I do like that. And I do think that there is really something to that. Matter of fact, if you haven't yet, take a look at some of Ron Paul's works, as well as Hayek and many others. Rothbard is another great one. They speak a lot on the decentralization of government, but also how to have a good, well-balanced economy that's founded on real viable backing, such as like gold, precious metals, and other forms, to have a solid currency and not one that is just going to fall apart at the seams when something happens. So I really, really do advise people to go forth and check that out. So I'm going to read just a couple more here quick, and then I'm going to wrap it up. Pertains to your localized liberty phrase. Can you discuss that a bit? Yeah. So real quick. So localizing liberty, what is that? What it is, and at the core of a lot of the different things that I'm involved in. So I'm a state representative for the American Liberty Caucus. Big shout out to them. If you don't know who they are, I will put some links in the description below for you guys to be able to go and check out the American Liberty Caucus. They're always looking for great people who are liberty focused, liberty minded, liberty centric, that want to further liberty and help put the people that care about liberty in the positions that we need them to be, and also to help support good causes as well. We have wonderful people there that work in a myriad of different areas, everything from bills and legislation and helping campaigns and so much more. Highly, highly recommend you go check them out. I will put them in the description below. One of the biggest emphasis that we make is that we have to start from the local and community level and kind of work our way up. If we can start to make a difference in our local and community level, one, it's much easier. It's much easier to start something more grassroots than it is trying to go immediately to the federal level. In order to do that, you have to be able to relate with people. You have to be able to get to know people and bring people together. Localizing liberty means bringing back a liberty-centric focus to the community. So you're starting small, but it makes a big impact down the road. It has staying power. It has the ability to bring people together and realize that liberty is a far more foundational approach at being able to fix problems and being able to do it in a way that is typically less injurious and more recoverable over time, versus having an overwhelming government presence that has to be all-consuming, all-seeing, all-controlling. You now put it in the ability, or you put it in the court of the individual and the community to be able to come up and solve some of their problems with a more reasonable, realistic, and appropriate approach. So when you have localized liberty, you're talking about farmers markets, you're talking about being able to sell things to and from each person, divesting out of a broken system and being able to set up something that far better suits the community that you're in, and so many other things. There's it's an overall far better approach, and I think it's something that's going to be seen as more tenable as time goes on, where you really start to see people divest from this bad situation that we're in and be able to set up these little microcosms of liberty. And I really, really hope that we start to see this proliferate more and more and more as time goes on. But we have to be part of that process. And we also have to educate our children as how to be a part of that process down the road. So that way they have a better future and a better life in order to make it far more sustainable and stronger against the attacks of people who want to see it destroyed. So I absolutely love localized liberty. It's not my saying, it's a saying I heard, and I don't remember exactly where I heard it, but it's fantastic. And if we can bring liberty back down, if we can bring the issues back down to a community level, work together and pool our resources, there is less and less need of not only federal intervention, but intervention at a higher level of the state as well. We can solve all of our problems, and we can do it in a way that is going to support the rights and liberties of the individual, as opposed to have to deprive them in the process of being able to do something that's going to improve. So absolutely love that. Thank you, Centerline Systems, for pointing that out. Make smoke and mirrors. Gene, I love the comment, smoke and mirrors and the lizard men. I mean, who knows at this point, you know? I mean, it's possible, always possible that they're just lizard men in, you know, skin tight apparel, right? Yeah, so that, guys, you are awesome in the chats. I really, really appreciate everybody. I'm going to start to wrap it up here. Thank you, everybody, for getting involved this evening, getting involved into the comment section. Please don't be afraid to carry on this conversation in the comments, even after the video. I really, really appreciate it. And I love seeing all of the feedback, all of the information, all of the opinions, perspectives, everything that's put forth. It is because of you guys that I continue to try my best to put out a better episode every single time. You guys really do make this all possible. And, you know, if you like what you hear, like, subscribe, throw it out and share it amongst your peers, your neighbors, your family, whatever the case is. Let's bring more people into the discussion. Let's hear more of the comments. Let's hear more of the perspectives, because we really, really have to work together in order to push forward the message of liberty and hopefully be able to retake our posterity for our future and hopefully provide a better outcome in the end, right? So this fight, it requires all of us, not just on here. Go forth, get involved in your community, get educated, find groups like the American Liberty Caucus and see where you fit in and how you can help. Check out, you know, if you're in Minnesota, even if you don't consider yourself a libertarian, hey, check them out, see what they're about, and you know, head on over to the LPMN website. I believe it's lpmn.org. I'll put them down also. To my Minnesotan people, check them out, get a hold of them. I'm sure they would love to hear from you. They're always open to being able to help people find their spot and where they can make a difference, and hopefully be able to make a difference in your community. So between the American Liberty Caucus and the LPMN, I absolutely love these guys. They do great work, and I really do feel like their hearts are in the right place. But it's not limited to that, right? You have to figure out where you belong, where you feel that you work best, but you have to get out there, work, be a part of this this effort, because we can't do it without you. So with all that being said, everybody, I really, really, truly appreciate everybody stopping in. I really do. Your support is absolutely appreciated, and I can't do it without all of you. So on that note, on Saturday, I haven't posted anything yet for Saturday. I'm still trying to figure out a few details, but I will have an update for Saturday. Just a little bit of housekeeping. I will post that. I can actually make posts on YouTube, so look out for that post for YouTube. You may actually have to go over to my channel and look under the posts, but I will put some information there, as well as Instagram, and I'll try and get it out where I can. So be on the lookout for that. I will be live at 1700 Central Time on Saturday. That is 5 p.m. on Saturday Central Time. So be on the lookout for that. Hopefully, like I said, I'll have some updates and everything regarding the show for that. But without further ado, I'm going to leave you guys and gals with a outro song. Yes, that's right. I have something in the works, and put in the comments. Let me know what you think of it, and if you feel like it's a good one, let me know. If you hate it, let me know. But without further ado, have a good rest of your night. Go with liberty and be the change that you want to see.
Steel-clad fist, rise in the dark. Shattered chains ignite the spark. Tyrants crumble, feel the flame. Settle strike and freedom sing. March of vengeance, hearts of stone, blades of justice carve the throne. Freedom's cry, a deafening roar. Liberty's warriors waging war. March of vengeance, hearts of stone, blades of justice carve the throne. Freedom's cry, a deafening roar. Liberty's warriors waging war. Sentinels rise, unyielding force, tearing through the tyrant's course. Shields of valor, swords of fire, crushing the weight of the empire. Fields of ruin, skies of red, echoes of the fallen dead. Through the ashes, they ascend. The fight for freedom will not end. Chains of oppression, ripped apart. Rage and courage, fill the heart. No retreat, no surrender. The flames of liberty burn forever. Sentinels rise, unyielding force, tearing through the tyrant's course. Shields of valor, swords of fire, crushing the weight of the empire. Kaiser!